People only root for people who don't need it. The amount of times when I was on my lonely path where I was too different from the friends that I had, but not successful enough to be friends with the people that I wanted to be friends with. That's when you want people to root for you. That's when you want people to support you. Once you've already won, people are like, he's amazing, he's so good. But like, that's the time when you need it the least. People struggle to do things alone. And the path of the exceptional person is one of an exception, which means that you are not with other people. And rather than fighting that or bemoaning it, see it as an indicator that you're on the right path. Because if everyone else were cheering you on, then it means you're not in the right place, because it means you're just like everyone else, and that's not where you want to be. You always have to be the person who roots for you before everyone else does. And it's usually a single clap in the auditorium for a very long period of time. It is a slow clap that's just you rooting for you. I think most people feel really lonely when you want something that doesn't currently exist. And so some people call that dreams, some people call that goals, whatever it is. You're trying to pull something from your mind into reality, and you want it done a certain way. And if it's not done that way, it's not what you imagined. And so people on the outside will throw stones and call you names that they think will change your behavior and get you to stop. And the more I have been the person trying to pull things into reality, the more I've tried to weather and build kind of defenses against those things, so that when those stones get hurled at you by being called a control freak, or by saying you micromanage things, or that you have incredibly high standards, the answer is yes, because I want it done right the first time. Everybody, when I was sleeping on the gym floor, right? Like, you know, I was the underdog. You know, my clients were all like, "Oh, good for you. You know, you're going after your dream." And they'd see my blanket and my pillow in the corner of the gym, and they knew I was sleeping there, and it was evident. You know, I lived there. I didn't have a shower to go to the YMCA to go shower, and that everybody was like pro me. And then people would come in, they sign up like, I'm gonna support you, right? And then within 9 months, I had hired people and I had a manager, and I pulled up. And I remember I walked in the lobby, and all the same people were like, "Oh, boss man's here. Oh, you're not too good for us now, right?" And I remember being so jarred by the experience, and I was like, "You guys rooted for me," and I was like, "And now I did what you said you were rooting for me to do," and that was when I realized that people want you to do well, but not better than them. There's this period of discomfort when you change anything, because everyone around you wants you to fit within the label that they are comfortable with.
But they also have the anchor of what you were before.
Yeah, exactly. And so they try and like, they people don't like that. And so they're like, no, I like you in this box. So just say, I know you're having a little thing right now. Don't worry. Just, and they just want to shove you back into it. And there's a lot of uncomfortable conversations that you have to have where it becomes really socially awkward. And so like I said one the other day about like going home for the holidays, and the reason I don't like doing it is because often I have to confront a lot of people that I haven't seen in a long time, and they'll speak to me in a way that I don't like. And before that, I would roll it off like whatever, no big deal. But I don't accept that. If you're going through that right now, and I promise you, every single person who wants to do something with their life and has done something with their life has gone through the exact chapter that you're going through. And it's the lonely chapter. It's the chapter where you don't fit in with your own friends, but you don't have the outcomes yet to fit into a new group of friends. And you're doing this thing, you're consuming content on the internet, you're doing these free tutorials online to try and figure out how to set up a podcast and where do I host this thing? And you're going through this and you're like, is this even worth it? Because you have no signs of success, right? But if there's anything that you can take away from what we're saying right now, is that the sign of success is the hate that you get along the way. And what you can't do is bend the knee to their hate and fit back into the conformity because it's comfortable and it's warm. Because like in the Matrix, when Trinity opens the door, when Neo's about to go take the red pill and he wants to get out of the car, she says,
"You know that road. You know exactly where it ends.
And I know that's not where you want to be." And then he closes the door. Like right now, this moment that you're going through is Trinity opening the door and being like, you could go back, But then you'd have to remember exactly what the reason was that you decided not to go out to begin with, just because you listen to this podcast and you consume this content, and you're like, I can fucking do more than this. The skills that you develop along the way, like Steve Jobs learning calligraphy that then became Apple fonts that, transformed how we type. Those early days, that little trench winning in the weeds, oftentimes gives you these huge advantages later on because you have more context than anyone else. And so rather than lament them and hate the fact that you're going through it, remembering that these will be arrows that you put in the quiver that you're going to be using to slay the future bigger dragons. And so expecting it to be easy is what makes it much harder than it ever is. I'd say one of the strongest mental frames that has gotten me through my hardest times is thinking this will be the story that I will one day tell. And that means the harder it is, the bigger the dragon, the more epic the story, and by consequence, the more epic the hero. And if you think about the difference between winners and losers, winners define themselves by what they made happen, and losers define themselves by what happened to them. And the difficult part of the lonely chapter is that the Rocky cutscene lasts 90 seconds in the movie and lasts 5 years in reality. The first time you squat, you're orienting yourself to your environment. You're barely actually squatting. You're just looking like you have a bar on your back. But you learn so much between that first rep and your 10,000th rep of squats. And so I think for most people, it's like, if I can just decrease the action threshold for people to begin and be okay with the fact that they're going to suck, and it is okay to suck. You should expect to suck. And it would be unreasonable for you to be good if you haven't done it before. And so it's like, are you asking the universe to be unreasonable for you by expecting to be good on your first try? And I think that's where a lot of people, it's the expectation that destroys their ability to be successful because they expect to win on the first shot, and no one does. It's not speed of activity, it's elimination of waste. There's all these other things that people are distracting themselves with. And so if you were that young man, you have to recognize the trade-offs that you have to be willing to make. You have to change your environment so you can change your behavior. And you have to delete everything that's not the thing that you want most. And if you can't decide what you want most, then that's what you need to do first. But once you know what you want, then go get it. People want the confidence before the reps. But especially in confidence, the proof comes before the pudding. You have to do the reps before people are like, wow. Because you can't fake, you can fake confidence,
people
but not to
know.
yourself. You'll know. And as far as I'm concerned in life, I'm the only one I'm trying to impress. And so if I know I'm fake, I'm the one who in the middle of the night is looking up being like, I can't believe I'm so full. I would hate that. It's an empty life. It's also living for other people. And so if the toxic trait is people wanting the outcome without the repetition, right? It's without the price. That's how I say that's number one. The second one is, has everything to do, it's an offshoot, but is entitlement, right? Is fundamentally believing you deserve things. You have to be willing to trade the things you love right now for the things you want. And you may not like the price of what you want, but you can't change the price. And so there's all this groveling that goes back and forth for younger men of like basically wishing it didn't cost this much time or cost this much failure or cost this much risk in order to get to where they want to go. And so they basically stomp their heels and then, retreat inwards into their basement and video games and whatever else, rather than confronting their own inadequacy. Because the first thing you have to do is say, it's my fault. Everything that I have in my life is my fault. But if it's your fault, it's also under your control to change, because you cannot change what you do not control. And so to me, it's taking full accountability. If you have a belief and you can't explain why you believe it, it's not yours, it's someone else's. And most people walk around parroting other people's words for the vast majority of their lives. And so they basically act as recorders, where they clicked record at one point of their life and then they click play in another time in their life, and they're just clicking record, play, record, play, record, play over and over again. And the reason there's that, in my opinion, that other self that's behind it is because none of those words are yours. And so it makes sense that people feel alone and they feel like they're acting because they never say what they think. And as a result, they also sound like everyone else because they were never themselves to begin with. Giving myself permission to be unhappy for an extended period of time in order to get what I wanted gave me so much relief from, honestly, I don't like using the word nowadays because it has so many associations, but just from like the depression or the funk that I was in for a few years.
Right?
Yeah, I just didn't like my life. And I'd achieved by most measures, because I don't have the, school failed me. I was a whatever, like I wasn't that. I finished in 3 years and I did really well in school and I had a really good job. But it was empty for me. And so my goal is things we talked about earlier, but my personal goal is to squeeze every ounce of potential out of whatever I have. And I think that if you feel like you have potential left over, then it will eat you alive until you do something about it. People are afraid of not getting validated, or they're afraid of judgment that they perceive from other people that exist or don't exist in their lives. A lot of people just underestimate the amount of effort it takes to go from good to great. And so for whatever reason, they have this second voice that criticizes everything they do that in reality isn't even there. I would say 99% of the things that I've learned through doing. Most people had a graveyard of failures before they had their actual first success. With 20 hours of focused effort, most people can be pretty decent at something, but most people spend years waiting to do the first hour. I think the things that were withheld from us are the things that usually we seek the most. Competitors don't put you out of business, but you obsessing over competitors does. The idea that my future self would trade all the money he had to be poor and 20 again made me really reanalyze how I saw living life in the moment. How many successful guys have daddy issues? So many.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, well, I didn't get his respect, so I'm gonna have to compensate with my circumstances, with my environment, so that everyone respects me. And some people do that through fear, some people do that through violence, some people do that through success. It really just depends what vehicle you choose. I feel like the deep need is the same. I think a lot of my definitions have been defined by my actions. I am the person who has done these things, and I will do things that will get me closer to the things that I want to achieve. A lot of my definition of self has always been based on evidence. I think it was harder for me in the beginning because I didn't have evidence to support what I hoped to be true about myself, which at the time wasn't. If I can just decrease the action threshold for people to begin and be okay with the fact that they're going to suck, and it is okay to suck. You should expect to suck, and it would be unreasonable for you to be good if you haven't done it before. And so it's like, are you asking the universe to be unreasonable for you by expecting to be good on your first try? And so I think that if we can shift the time horizon that we think in, then we gain more leverage over our time, which we then know we will compound into money. Because I think if you can master the time, you master the money.
What did you learn about the habits of the rich?
I haven't learned much about the habits of the rich at all, to be very candid with you. I think that maybe there are some beliefs that, because like my dad was a doctor, I wouldn't say he was like, ultra wealthy, but like we lived an upper middle class, lifestyle. But in terms of like wealth, as I think you and I would probably understand it, I didn't know anything about that. And I don't think I've ever really studied it very much. I would say that my heroes now, like I started studying wealth after I became wealthy. So like.
What did you learn about it afterwards? And what do wealthy people do that you think poor people don't do?
They pick higher leverage opportunities, in a sentence. So like rich dad, poor dad, like poor dad says get a job, poor dad says get a higher paying job. And the thing is, there's so many innate beliefs that seem commonplace, like, well, of course. You know what I mean? Like, well, of course, you buy some real estate and, it'll appreciate over time. Of course, you invest in some stocks. Like, yeah, of course. Poor dads just don't say that. And so you have to like learn that, I think. And I didn't, so I'm grateful in that I didn't have to learn that because I heard that just was, of course, yeah, once you have some money, like, of course you don't spend your whole income. Of course you don't. And so there's a lot of course you don'ts that I think I inherited just by being like a saving father. But there's also some upper middle class people who don't save anything. But I think my dad did I think he helped a lot with like money hygiene. I've had a lot of really good money hygiene from my dad. The big breakthrough that I had for me was when I stopped focusing on, and this is gonna sound backwards, but when I started my gyms, I was all about building the business, right? And when I built the biggest companies that I've had and now recently sold, and now we have our portfolio, it was about how do we make the most money? And I know that sounds completely backwards, but the only way that you can make the most money is to provide an exceptional valued service and charge a ton of money for it. And because I optimized around making money, I started going for low capital expense businesses because I had lost everything after that 5-year stint. And so I was like, never again am I gonna reinvest every dollar from the business back into the business because I've lost it before. So when I started the next business and every business I've had thereafter, like we take dividends every month. And we do that because
You don't wait till there's an exit 10 years later
No, I mean,
and put all your money in.
I'd love to do both.
Yeah.
Why not both?
Sure.
Right? And so that was
Take a dividend and get a bigger
Of course.
dividend. Yeah. But not just put money in and wait and get no money back.
100%. And the thing is, and this was a fallacy I had, because people always talk about like reinvesting in their business, but I realized that just meant that they weren't making profit. And so, and so the vast majority of businesses, even the software world is somewhat shifting in this, but they want to see profit. And then even better is if you have net free cash flow, which is just a fancy word for the amount of money that you can take out every month after making necessary investments in the business. And so I wanted to have businesses that pumped cash flow because I had lost it all before. If people were able to not ask for 12 months and just serve, and don't get me wrong, I'm all about making money. Like, by all means, go get your bag. But I think that what it does is it ends up freeing you to then make your real impact, because then you can start whatever the next thing, and hopefully your first thing is that thing, but realistically it probably isn't. And all you have to do is look at every entrepreneur that's really wealthy, the amount of graveyard businesses they have in their back. Right. And so like right now, if you're listening and you're like, I'm not sure if this is the perfect business idea, let me just save you the time. It's not, because look at every other person who has been ultra successful. They have 10 failed business ideas. So just start, so you can just start notching off the bad businesses, right? But extending the time horizon, I think, only happens if you do shift the intention through which you're building it, or you're just unbelievably self-disciplined. But I think it's easier to just like start at it with the right heart, because small tangent, but I think it'll be worth it, is that the reason that most people aren't successful, in my opinion, is that they sacrifice global benefit for local benefit. And that happens in all areas of life. You eat the piece of cake because you have an acute local benefit versus the global benefit of a six-pack that lasts for a very long time, or better health, etc. The three things that I think were in common of the ultra successful were inflated sense of self, as in they thought that they deserved big things, they wanted to go after big things, inferiority, never being good enough, and impulse control.
Those are the three factors of the most successful.
That, like, when they did a common factors analysis, like, these people think, they believe that they can achieve all this amazing stuff, and then it's an amazing paradox, because at the same time they think they're not good enough, and they are insecure about whether they can achieve it. And they have impulse control. And they stay focused on the thing. And I'd say the biggest breakthroughs that I've had, I think, that will create a lot of the wealth that we will have in the future is really a deep understanding of how long is, and shooting with the intention of, like, I'm only bringing this up because my YouTube guy said it. He's like, I've never had somebody who actually started it. I was like, we'll see what we do in 5 years. I was like, we'll measure that. And he was like, no one has literally ever said that to me. I was like, as long as I see progress, I'm good.
Because everyone wants results in like 2 months. You know?
Like if we're going this way, I'm cool. I don't need to say, like, that's good enough. For most people, if they could extend the time horizon, because, like, I'll give you another hack. You can know how wealthy someone is based on the time horizons they speak in. So if someone's talking about how they're trying to make money today, hey, let me hold 20 for today. You know how poor they are. I have to say poor. Like, how poor they are, right? If someone's talking about what they're going to make this week, or this month, or this quarter, or this year, or this decade, think about how different the people are who are talking in those time horizons. Mm-hmm. And so I think that if we can shift the time horizon that we think in, then we gain more leverage over our time, which we then know we will compound into money. Because I think if you can master the time, you master the money.
If somebody is starting from scratch, what are the traits, skill sets that they should be cultivating in order to up the odds of their success?
They should focus on one thing in general, rather than lots of different things that you're not sure about. Because if you're starting out, everything looks like an opportunity. So the correct answer is all of them are opportunities, but all of them won't work unless you pick one, right? So you have to say no to all the other mistresses. So boom, you pick one. And then from there, I always say 6 figures is sell something to someone. That's it. And if you want more detail, sell something to someone. So it's one avatar, one product, one channel. So you don't have to figure out, how do I create 20 pieces of content across? It's like, just pick one channel, one media source, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever, Twitter. Consistently start going on that, whether that's cold outbound, whether that's content, whether it's running paid ads, whether it's affiliates, word of mouth, whatever it is, and start reaching out to people there to start selling your stuff. And so I use something that I call the Rule 100, which is 100 primary actions, whether that's 100 minutes of content creation per day, 100 reach outs per day, $100 of ad spend per day. You have to pick one of them, but 100 per day and you do that for 100 days, and I promise you you'll be making 6 figures if you do that. People are afraid of not getting validated, or they're afraid of judgment that they perceive from other people that exist or don't exist in their lives. And so for whatever reason, they have this second voice that criticizes everything they do that in reality isn't even there, but is constantly present. It's like the antithesis of whatever the God figure is, but just the negative voice. And so I think that's the thing that stops most people from doing the stuff they know they need to do. Because if you think about, like, whether it's want to get in shape, or I want to have a better marriage, or I want to make more money, most people on some level, at a basic level, they know what to do. And my proof point of, like, even making money, right? Most of us have had a bill that came up that was unexpected, a tax bill, a car breaks down, a health thing, whatever it is, and we find a way. And so when it's for someone else, people are use the actual resourcefulness that they have to make the money, but for whatever reason, they won't use that same resourcefulness to make it for themselves. And so I think that most people know, if they want to work out, to get in shape or to lose weight, whatever, they know they need to eat fewer donuts and move more in general, but they don't, right? Because they're afraid of getting started, or they don't have the discipline to keep going, which is they can't make the short-term sacrifice for the long-term achievement. So big picture, it's like there's usually some fear that's preventing from doing it, and then how it looks from a behavioral standpoint is they do not make the short-term sacrifice of discomfort for the long-term achievement. Champions are broken. I was like, huh. He's like, people look at champions and try and find something that champion has that they don't have. And he's like, but it's not that at all. He's like, they lack something everyone else has, which is an off button. They just don't stop. And at the end of the day, like, if we're optimizing for outcomes, then the most broken person will win. The person who has the absolute biggest, desire for achievement, the absolute biggest fear or pain that they're running away from, and the hardest impulse control. If you had to create a human, what would you put them through to make them tough? It probably wouldn't be a really chill life.
Yeah.
What would you put them through to make them patient? Well, you probably wouldn't give them things immediately. And so it's like, we want these traits, but each of the traits has a price tag attached to it. And it's just like, do you want to pay the price tag to get the thing? And so I think if people reframed the period of life that they're going through as the price that they're paying out of their wallet, but the wallet is their time, is the seconds of life that they're trading for it, then I think more people will be willing to make the trade. Because at least when I look at myself, like when I'm 80 something years old and I'm looking back on my life, I want to have these traits. But in order to have those traits, I know I have to go through these things. And I think for me, that's given me a lot of comfort in hard times. Every single person who wants to do something with their life and has done something with their life has gone through the exact chapter that you're going through. And it's the lonely chapter. It's the chapter where you don't fit in with your own friends, but you don't have the outcomes yet to fit into a new group of friends. And you're going through this and you're like, is this even worth it? Because you have no signs of success, right? But if there's anything that you can take away from what we're saying right now, is that the sign of success is the hate that you get along the way. And what you can't do is bend the knee to their hate and fit back into the conformity because it's comfortable and it's warm. Because like in the Matrix, when Trinity opens the door, when Neo's about to go take the red pill and he wants to get out of the car, she says, Neo, you've been down that road and you know exactly where it leads. And I know that's not where you want to be. People only root for people who don't need it. Like the amount of times when I was on my lonely path where I was too different from the friends that I had, but not successful enough to be friends with the people that I wanted to be friends with. That's when you want people to root for you. That's when you want people to support you. Once you've already won, people are like, he's amazing, he's so good. But like, that's the time when you need it the least. And so you always have to be the person who roots for you before everyone else does. And it's usually a single clap in the auditorium for a very long period of time. It is a slow clap that's just you rooting for you. And the path of the exceptional person is one of an exception, which means that you are not with other people. And rather than fighting that or bemoaning it, see it as an indicator that you're on the right path. Because if everyone else were cheering you on, then it means you're not in the right place, because it means you're just like everyone else, and that's not where you want to be.
How do you, quote, stand out when everyone's loud? And this is going to sound trite, but your fingerprint is unique, literally from a biological perspective, but so is your life and your experiences. And so there's real alpha or benefit to be had above normal level of effort by leaning into you. And so what makes every person unique is what makes their content unique. And so trying to be like, oh, I want to make content like Alex is probably not the best way to do it, because you're not going to beat me at being me, but you'll beat me at being you. And so it's basically your flavor of media. So like for me, it's like, what is, my brand to model this? It's like, well, I have elements of philosophy that are in my brand. Well, do I need that? No, but that's like kind of me. I obviously talk a ton about business, marketing and sales, promotion, conversion. Those are all things that I spend a lot of time thinking about. And so a lot of my content's about that. Fitness is a component of my life. And so there's light sprinkling of fitness in my content. Also, I come from a background of fitness with Gym Launch and the companies that I owned before that. And so that would make sense that, and I've my wife Layla, and so that's sprinkled in. And so like those are basically the components of my life. And so that's what kind of shines through in my content. I consume a ton of comedy, and so sometimes you'll see some dry humor and dark humor that shines through, but that's me. Now you have all of those little buckets of you, and not only are those buckets unique, but also the proportions of those buckets will be different. And so maybe your philosophy is way bigger, or maybe Fitness Part is way bigger. But I think what makes the truly unique personal trainer fitness brand is leaning into people being interested in you for being you. And then being like, by the way, I have fitness stuff if you want to buy it from me. And I think the key part is the vast majority of products and services are commoditized. You're probably not going to be significantly better than other trainers, just being real. You probably aren't. But you will be different than them. And we want to lean on, I want to buy fitness from somebody, and so I might as well buy it from her, or I might as well buy it from him. So you're taking basically the audience that would buy from anyone, but your brand premium gets them to want to buy it from you.
Most people's definition of work is a negative one, which is why they abhor it, which is also why they misunderstand so many people who quote, I'll say quote here, are successful or ahead of them or whatever, is that both people, one person says the word work and the other person hears the word pain. And so the first step to like becoming more successful is understanding the language that the people who are successful are using. They're actually defining the word differently. And so whatever that thing is that you actually enjoy doing, where you lose track of time when you're in it, even if it's challenging, but usually it is challenging, right? Like it's not easy because then it's boring, right? Which is also why the uncertainty thing is so key, right? To not knowing if it's gonna work or not. You are gonna work though, either way. Is that the people who are quote addicted to work make it easy to be addicted to work because they do things worth doing. And I think a lot of it is coming down to making sure that you take the few precious seconds that we have to do the few things that are worth doing for the rest of your life.
Business ideas typically come from one of three P's. So it comes from a pain that you're currently experiencing, a past profession, so the thing that you just quit or some of the jobs that you just quit, or a passion. Mm-hmm. So something that you're inherently interested in that you would spend your time doing anyways, some skill that you learned while you were in the workforce, which by the way is one of the most proven ways of making money, because the economy has already showed you that people are willing to exchange money for that specific job. And so in the world of gig economies and solopreneurs, every business can be dismantled into just jobs being done, and all of those jobs can be fractionalized. So anybody, like, we look at any business, you've got sales, you've got marketing, you've got customer success, you've got customer support if you want to differentiate that, you've got product, you've got design, you've got web pages. There's so many different components to a business. You just need to learn one of them. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, boom, you have a skill that you can trade for money that you don't have anybody else to report to. And then pain is usually, I think, in some ways, sometimes one of the biggest drivers is like you had an eating allergy and you couldn't find pancakes that dealt with your specific eating allergy. And you bet that there's a decent amount of other people with that allergy that also like pancakes. And so then you make pancakes that are delicious and amazing that also cater to people with that food allergy. And then all of a sudden, like, you have a business based on pain.
And why does that matter?
What
the
part?
Pain part.
I think that deep knowledge of the prospect is paramount or very important for creating exceptional products. And you can either do that by doing a ton of research or by being the prospect. And there's a certain amount of like visceral feel that you'll know. Like if someone wants to make a nose product for breathing, I have tried every product since I was in 8th grade. So it's been 20 plus years, 30, whatever, a lot of years, that since then, and I've tried everything. And so I know the pros and cons of every product that exists on the market. It's not like, oh, I tried it for a day. It's like, I'll try things for a month at a time. And so I have so much time exposure to this problem that I have a lot of nuance in my opinion on what's wrong with the solutions. So I can formulate a way better hypothesis on how to fix it.
What's wild about the fear that people have when they're starting out is that they say things like, I have nothing going for me. I have no advantages. I have nothing to my name. I have no money. I have no network. I have no resources. But using Rory Sutherland's reframing, it also means that you have nothing to lose, which makes you incredibly dangerous. And I think people wildly underestimate how many shots on goal you can take when you have nothing to lose. Whereas when someone has something to lose, they have to be more and more selective about the shots they take. And so you have the perfect conditions for taking risk, because the worst case scenario is baseline, is where you're currently at.
Correct. Yeah.
And so that
your
means,
downside is this.
which means that it's like going to the casino and playing craps, but they say that you can just keep playing until you win. But people are afraid to roll.
So a very close friend of mine did all the Olympic teams, nutrition and supplementation stuff for a country overseas. And he said, you know the difference between champions and everyone else? And I was like, what? And he said, everyone always looks at them and says, what do champions have that I don't have? And he said, they have it backwards. He said, it's what do champions not have that I have? It's what do they lack? And it's an off button. They just don't stop. And so in dealing with the gold medals, he's like, they just never stop. They just can't stop. Everything in their life is geared towards one goal. And so finding that thing, and they approach everything in their life that way. And I think that that level of obsession around like everything that you touch on a daily basis is required for really getting to where you want to go. I think one of the major plights of humanity, myself included, is the expectation that life should be different than it is. And so we create this idea that whatever we have right now is not what it should be. And I think should is the root of all pain, is that all the things that we think should happen but aren't is basically the measurement of our pain. And so I've tried to eradicate should from my life. Should for other people, she should do this, they should do that. And just lean into is. It just is this way. I work, period. Not I should work more, I should work less, or I should work differently, or I should see my mom more, I should call my dad more. I do this. And if something changes, I will change. And so unconditional shoulds. Now, if there is a condition of like, if you want to make more money, then this is a higher likelihood. You might want to consider doing this. Those are things that I don't consider in that category, but just the generalized shoulds of he shouldn't do that. He should build a family. He should have kids. He should have gotten married earlier. He should have gotten later. He should have married someone different. He shouldn't have the life that he has. He shouldn't work this way. According to what? And so for me, that is my theory on life, on happiness, work, and love has been very unified, because I love my work so much that I got out of a relationship, and when I started dating Layla, I said, I am not willing to change this. And so you have to be willing to deal with me working this way, or this won't work, because my relationship with my work is the most satisfying relationship I have. Now people will hear that and be like, well, that's because he's never experienced true love, or whatever narrative they'll say. But it's like, you haven't lived my life and I haven't lived yours, and I don't project anything onto you. But I love what I do. And I get attacked for liking what I do so much. And I like working a lot, and it's because they have negative associations with the word, and that's their own history of their experience with the word. But I see my goals and my relationship with my goals as one of the most sacred things that I have, because I see them as a relationship with myself.
People have a hard time just saying no to things. And I would encourage you, if you're listening to this, like, try saying no to, try actually telling the truth when you don't want to do something. Because we have so many social niceties that we say, oh, I'm really busy, or it's a really bad time right now, or whatever. I had somebody the other day, I was with a friend, and I didn't notice that I did this. So sometimes it's nice to have somebody from the outside. And so somebody came up to me, we were looking at a real estate property, and someone knew I was going to be there, and said that guy showed up unannounced or whatever, and he was like, "Hey man, can we do a podcast?" And I was like, "I'm just in town, gonna hang out with Layla for the next few days, like not really trying to do that." And he asked again, and he was like, "Hey, maybe like 20 minutes. Let's we can just rock one out." And I was like, "Well, let me show you my calendar." And I pulled up my calendar, and it was all empty. And I said, "See, there's nothing on there." And I was like, "And I just want to keep it that way." And I didn't think anything of it, but apparently he left, and then my friend just starts crying, laughing, just thinking how hilarious. He's like, "I can't believe you said that. That was so boss, blah, blah." And I was like, "What is he talking about?" He's like, "You just showed him your calendar that you had nothing, and you were still like, you're still not going to get any of my time." And I didn't perceive any of this extra narrative that he added to it. But I think just being able to say no to stuff when people ask you for it, because people ask you for stuff all the time. And it's these little nibs, these little tiny things. "Hey, can you do this?" Or, "Hey, can we show up to this thing?" Or, "Hey, you're supposed to." Or, "Hey, your aunt did that one thing for you, so therefore you owe her." And saying like, I don't subject myself to those rules. And I had a New Year's resolution, which I do believe in making resolutions. Like, why not? If you stick with them. And so one of my more recent ones was, there are no such thing as social obligations, only consequences.
Being really clear on what you want is important. So if you're like, "I want to be the richest person in the world," I think it's a terrible goal, but if you want that, great. Well, you have to have a multi-trillion-dollar idea, because by the time that occurs, there's already multi-trillion-dollar companies now. So you got to be looking at like decatrillion-dollar opportunity. And so, believe it or not, basically the bigger the goal, the narrower the scope of the paths to get there. If you're like, "I want to make $10 million, I'm like, you can literally do that in almost any business. You want to make $100 million, probably still almost any business you can do it. On a long enough time horizon, you can do it. A trillion or decatrillion, it's going to be some sort of tech. It's probably going to have some sort of AI. And so you get, basically the bigger the goal is, the narrower the scope of how to get there. But the vast majority of people who are like, "I want to be the richest man in the world," it's just because they don't know how to like really think through it and be like, all right, well, after like 100, there's really nothing you can't do except buy more big things. But like in terms of your actual consumption, maybe even 20 is like, you can only eat at restaurants that go so expensive. You can only stay at the best hotels. You can only drive the nicest cars. You can do that with about 25 million. Like, I look at Warren Buffett as somebody, and Charlie Munger as two of my heroes. Charlie worked until the day he died. And to be clear, I don't work on a 7-day calendar. I don't work a certain hour. I work as much as I can until I feel like my rate of output drops precipitously because of fatigue, and then I sleep. And then if I feel like on a longer time horizon of like, I've worked 9 days, I've worked 20 days, I've worked 30 days in a row, and I'm like, all right, I feel like I don't have any gas today, then I'll take the whole day off. And whether that's a Tuesday or a Sunday or a Saturday, I take the day off. And that just is what it is. And I have learned to work that way, and I am okay with it.
The goal clearly for you then is the hard work itself and not a certain place you're trying to get to necessarily.
Because that always moves.
Yeah.
And so Jesse Itzler has this, and maybe I'll be able to steal it from him someday. But he told it, I saw him show a picture of his kid finishing a race and putting a 0 up. And what that signified was nothing left in the tank. That he'd spent everything he had on the field. And it's like, I have this visual of the 300 movie, where the queen says to the king, as he goes off to battle, she says, "Come back with your shield or on it." And I kind of see like my work that way. Like, I can't imagine a better way to go out than like doing the thing I love.
If you think back to college, when you were a freshman, you think, wow, this is so hard or whatever. And then by the time you're a senior, you're like, man, these kids are so soft. And so we remember things as harder than they were. But I also think that there is a thread of reality, which is that the younger generation is softer. And I think we are softer than the generation above us. When I think about the guys who were storming Normandy, and I think about the people who would be attempting to do that now, as a class, I think that we are softer. And so the thing is that if you can barely decide to take any action at all and peel your eyes away from your phone for just a moment, it's so much easier to beat everyone else, because most people are overweight, they're distracted, they're poor, they have so few skills, because it has never been easier to start a business, to make money, to get in shape. It's just also never been easier to do nothing. And so in a world where it's never been easier to do nothing, doing something becomes extraordinary.
I saw a salesman say this at a conference, and he wrote $1 million on a whiteboard. And he called up a lady in the audience, and he said, "How much do you make?" And she said, $50,000 a year. So he wrote $50,000 underneath $1 million, and he subtracted it. And it said $950,000. He said, it costs you $950,000 every single year. You don't know how to make $1 million a year. And so the question is, what is the value of that skill? And the answer is the difference. And so the troll who responded to this originally was like, well, you can keep going. What about $100 million a year or $1 billion a year? And I was like, yes. If you had the skill of making $1 billion a year, then the difference between 50,000 and $1 billion is the delta of the value of that skill. And it's really not one skill. It's many skills that ladder up to, when combined together, to create that kind of value. But I remember that being like seared into my memory, which is like, whatever I want to have, the delta between where I'm at and where that thing is what I'm willing to sacrifice in order to learn what I need to learn to get there. And I think that if people appraised that delta, not by the money in their wallet or the time that they currently have, but how much they would be making or how much time they would have and how much that's worth to them, then I think far more people would be willing to invest in their education. And it's such a taboo word because people hate the word education. It's like, oh, it's like work, but like, you want to be an entrepreneur, like, you got to learn. There's so much stuff to learn. If I ever had one thing that people took from me, it was like absolute freedom. And because of that absolute freedom, we are 100% responsible for our own lives. And so where we place the finger of blame is also where power flows. So if you blame your parents for your life, your parents have power over your life. If you blame your boss for your bad life, your boss has power over your life. If you blame you for your bad life, at least you can change you and you can do something about it. And so I think absolute responsibility has been my core tenet. And if you have a life where you're like, I don't want to care about work that much and I just want to spend all my time with my family, I'm like, congratulations, you won. That's amazing. Just don't assume that everyone's you. I know that my message won't resonate with everyone, and that's okay. But it's for the few people who were like me and felt like everyone told them there was something wrong with them, and I still get people to tell me there's something wrong with me. And if wrong means not normal, then yeah, you bet. But it's more so that like, you are different, and that's okay. And I think that if you're okay with that, then it unleashes this whole new realm of possibility of being able to do what you want.
The only thing that you can do is win so big that all of them constantly compare themselves to you, and then you'll forget they exist. Success is the only revenge. It's not the best revenge. It's the only one. There's no other revenge.
Hard work is the goal. It's just to work hard. That is my goal.
And then die.
On things worth doing.